Hello, second graders. Today I would like to read for you Robin Hood, chapter 14, How Robin Hood Met Sir Richard of the Lea. How Robin Hood Met Sir Richard of the Lea. Then answered him the gentle knight with words both fair and free, God save thee, my good Robin, and all thy company. Months passed as winter dragged wearily through Sherwood Forest. Robin Hood and his merry men found what cheer they could in the big crackling fires before their woodland cave. Friar Tuck had built a little hermitage not far away, where he lived comfortably with his numerous dogs. At last the blessed spring came, just like us, and went. Another summer passed, and still neither king nor sheriff nor bishop could catch the outlaws, who, meanwhile, prospered mightily. The band had been increased from time to time by picked men such as Arthur a Bland until it now numbered a full 7 companies, each with its lieutenants serving under Robin Hood. And still they relieved the rich of their purses and aided the poor and feasted upon king's deer, until the sheriff of Nottingham was nearly insane. Indeed, the sheriff would probably have lost his office had it not been for the fact of the king's death. Henry passed away, as all kings will, like ordinary men, and Richard the Lion-Hearted was proclaimed as his successor. Richard the Lion-Hearted. We know about him from history. Then Robin and his men, after earnest debate, resolved to throw themselves upon the mercy of the new king, swear allegiance, and ask to be accepted as royal foresters. So Will Scarlet and Will Stutely and Little John were sent to London with this message, which they were first to give privately to Maid Marian. But they soon returned with bad tidings. The new king was still gone on a crusade to the Holy Land. Remember how King Richard was always gone, fighting in the Holy Land, fighting the crusades. And Prince John, John Lackland, Prince John, his brother, was impossible to deal with, being crafty, cruel, and treacherous. He was laying his hands upon all the property that could easily be seized, including the estates of the Earl of Huntingdon, Robin's old enemy and Marian's father, who had lately died. Marian herself was in trouble. Her estates had been taken away. That means like her house and her lands. She had lost the protection of the former queen, and the evil Prince John tormented her with his attentions. He thought that since Marian was defenseless, he could carry her away to one of his castles, and no one could prevent him. Prince John just thinks he can just snatch Marian away and take her away. No word of this peril reached Robin's ears, although his men brought him news of the seizure of the Huntingdon lands. Nonetheless, he was greatly alarmed for the safety of Maid Marian, and his heart cried out for her strongly. She had been continually in his thoughts ever since the tournament at London. One morning in early autumn, when the leaves were turning gold at the edges and the whole wide woodland was scented with the ripe fragrance of fruit, Robin was walking along the edge of a small glade, busy with his thoughts. The peace of the woods was upon him, despite his broodings over Marian, and he paid little notice to a group of does quietly feeding at the far edge of the glade. So Robin is feeling quite peaceful, although he's worried about Marian. So broodings are his worries. But suddenly, a stag, a male deer, wild and furious, dashed from among the trees, scattering the does. Those are the female deers. The vicious beast eyed Robin's green and gold tunic, and lowering its head, charged at him. Oh dear, can you visualize the scene? Paint a picture. So sudden was its attack that Robin had no time to bend his bow. He sprang behind a tree while he fixed an arrow upon the string. A moment later, the stag crashed blindly into the tree trunk with a shock that sent the beast reeling backward, while leaves from the shivering tree fell in a small shower over Robin's head. He saw the stag turn about and fix its glance rigidly on the bushes to the left side of the glade. These were parted by a delicate hand, and through the opening appeared the slight figure of a page. It was Maid Marian, who had come back to Sherwood. Oh, she must be in disguise as a page. Someone is a knight in training, right? She stepped forward, unaware of Robin's horrified gaze or the evil fury of the stag. She was directly in line with the animal, so Robin dared not launch an arrow. Her own bow was slung across her shoulder, and her small sword would be useless against the beast's charge. With a savage snort of rage, the beast rushed at this new target. Oh dear, he's going right for Marian. Rushed so swiftly and from so short a distance that Marian could not defend herself. She sprang to one side as it charged down upon her, but a glancing blow from its antlers stretched her upon the ground. The stag stopped, turned, and lowered its head, preparing to gore her to death. Oh dear. Already its cruel horns were coming straight for her, while she, bewildered, was struggling to rise. A moment more and the end would come. But the sharp voice of Robin had already spoken. "Down, Marian!" he cried, and the girl instinctively obeyed, just as the shaft from Robin's bow went whizzing close above her head and struck with terrific force full in the center of the stag's forehead. The beast stumbled and fell, dead, across Marian's body. She had fainted. Oh my goodness, could you imagine being in Marian's shoes right now? Robin was quickly by her side and dragged the beast off the girl. Picking her up in his strong arms, he carried her swiftly to the side of one of the brooks which watered the vale. He dashed cool water upon her face, roughly almost, in his agony of fear that she was already dead, and he nearly shed tears of joy to see those poor closed eyelids tremble. Presently she gave a little gasp. Where am I? What is it? You are in Sherwood. She opened her eyes and sat up. You have rescued me from sudden danger, sir, she said. Then she recognized Robin for the first time, and a radiant smile came over her face. Her head sank upon his shoulder with a little tremble and sigh of relief. Oh, Robin, it is you, she murmured. Aye, thank heaven. I was at hand to do you service. Robin's tones were full of feeling. I swear, dear Marian, that I will not let you from my care again. Not another word was spoken for some moments, while her head still rested upon his chest. Then, recollecting, he suddenly cried, Mercy, I make a poor nurse. I have not even asked if any of your bones are broken. No, she answered, springing lightly to her feet to show him. That foolish dizziness overcame me for the moment, but we can now go on our way. No, I did not mean that, he protested. Why should we hurry? First tell me the news in London and of yourself. She told him that the prince had seized her father's lands and promised to restore them to her if she would listen to his proposal, and how she knew that he meant her no good, for he was even then asking for a princess's hand. So Prince John is saying to Marian that he will give her back her father's lands if she will marry him, even though he was already proposing to a princess. Oh my goodness. That is all, Robin, she ended simply, and that is why I put on a page's costume and came to you. Robin's brow had grown fiercely black at the recital of all her wrongs, and he had laid his hand sternly on the hilt of his sword. Ooh, I'm inferring Robin is very mad. By this sword that Queen Eleanor gave me, he said impetuously, suddenly, hastily, and which is devoted to the service of all women, I promise that Prince John and all his army shall not harm you. So that is how Maid Marian came to live in the greenwood, where the whole band of yeomen welcomed her gladly, and Allan a Dale's wife made her fully at home. But this was a day of deeds in Sherwood Forest that led to later events. While Robin and Marian were having their encounter with the stag, Little John, Much, the miller's son, and Will Scarlet had gone to watch the high road leading to Barnesdale, on the chance they might meet a knight or prince whose wallet was too full. They had scarcely watched the great road for many minutes when they spied a knight riding by in a very sad manner. Little John came up to the knight and asked him to stop, for who can judge a man's wealth by his looks? The outlaw bent his knee in courtesy and asked the knight to accept the hospitality of the forest. My master expects you to dine with him today, he said. Who is your master? said the knight. Asked the knight. Robin Hood, replied Little John, laying his hand upon the knight's bridle. Seeing the other two outlaws approaching, the knight shrugged his shoulders and replied carelessly, It is clear that your invitation cannot be refused, said he, and I go with you right willingly, my friends. My purpose was to dine today at Doncaster, but nothing matters greatly. So in the same lackadaisical fashion, that means carefree, relaxed. So in the same lackadaisical fashion that had marked all his actions that day, the knight let his horse be led to the band's hideaway in the greenwood. Marian had not yet had time to change her page's costume when the three escorts of the knight came in sight. She recognized their captive as Sir Richard of the Lee. So not King Richard, this is a different Richard. Sir Richard of the Lee, whom she had often seen at court, and fearing he might recognize her, she turned to leave. But Robin asked her with a twinkle if she would not like to play page, and she consented to do so. Welcome, Sir Knight, said Robin courteously. You are come in good time, for we were just preparing to sit down to eat. God save you, Master Robin, returned the knight, and all your company. So while his horse was cared for, the knight laid aside his heavy gear, washed his face and hands, and sat down with Robin and all his men to a plentiful dinner of venison, swans, pheasants, various small birds, cakes, and ale. Marian stood behind Robin and filled his cup and that of the guest. After eating heartily, the knight brightened up greatly. Hi, Kitty. Hi. That's Miss Taylor's cat, Bob. You want to read too? After eating heartily, the knight brightened up greatly and vowed that he had not enjoyed so good a dinner for nearly 3 weeks. He also said that if ever Robin and his fellows should come to his lands, he would set them down to as good a dinner. But this was not exactly the sort of payment that Robin expected. He thanked the knight, but reminded him that a yeoman like himself could hardly offer such a dinner to a knight as a gift of charity. I have no money, Master Robin, answered the knight frankly. I have so little of the world's goods and truth that I should be ashamed to offer you the whole of it. Money, however little, always jingles merrily in our pockets, said Robin, smiling. Pray, tell me what you consider a little sum. I have 10 silver pennies, said the knight. Here they are, and I wish they were 10 times as many. He handed Little John his pouch, and Robin nodded carelessly. What is the total, Little John? He asked. It's true enough, as the knight had said, responded the big fellow, emptying the contents on his cloak. Robin signed to Marian, who filled a cup of wine for himself and his guest. Sir Knight, cried the merry outlaw, why these sorry times? I see that your armor is bent and that your clothes are torn, yet I think I saw you at court once upon a day, and looking more prosperous. Tell me now, have you been a bad steward to yourself and wasted your money in lawsuits and the like? Do not be bashful with us. We shall not betray your secrets. I am a Saxon knight in my own right, and I have always lived a sober and quiet life, the sorrowful guest replied. 'Tis true, you may have seen me at court, for I saw you at King Harry's tournament. My name is Sir Richard of the Lee, and I dwell in a castle not far from one of the gates of Nottingham, which has belonged to my father and his father and his father's father before him. 2 or 3 years ago, my neighbor might have told you that a matter of 400 pounds, one way or the other, was nothing to me. But now I have only 10 pennies, these 10 pennies of silver, and my wife and son. How have you lost your riches? Asked Robin. Through folly and kindness, said the knight, sighing. I went with King Richard upon a crusade, from which I lately returned in time to find my son grown up. He had achieved a squire's training and could play prettily in jousts and tournaments and other knightly games, but he had the ill luck to accidentally kill a knight in the open lists. So that's at one of the tournaments. To save the boy, I had to sell my lands and mortgage my family's castle. And this not being enough, in the end I have had to borrow money at a very high interest from the Lord of Hereford. A most worthy bishop, said Robin. How much is your debt? 400 pounds, said Sir Richard, and the bishop swears he will take my castle if they are not paid promptly. So the bishop has agreed to lend him this money, but he's charging him a lot of extra money, a lot of interest, which is not a very virtuous thing to do. Have you any friends who would guarantee your promise for you? Not one. If good King Richard were here, the tale might be otherwise. Fill your goblet again, Sir Knight, said Robin, and he turned to whisper in a word in Marian's ear. She nodded, drew Little John and Will Scarlet aside, and talked earnestly with them in a low tone. Here is health and prosperity to you, gallant Robin, said Sir Richard, tilting his goblet. I hope I may repay your hospitality more worthily the next time I ride by. Will Scarlet and Little John meanwhile consulted the other outlaws, who nodded their heads. Then Little John and Will Scarlet went into the cave near by and presently returned bearing a bag of gold. Then they counted out 400 gold pieces before the astonished knight. Can you imagine what the knight is feeling now? They're going to give him 400 gold pieces so he can repay his debt to the fat Bishop of Hereford. Take this loan from us, Sir Knight, and pay your debt to the bishop, said Robin. And you owe us no thanks. You are only exchanging creditors. Perhaps we shall not be so hard upon you as the Christian bishop. Yet again, we may be harder. Who can tell? So Robin is kind of joking here. He's saying, well, I'm just going to lend you this money, but he's kind of joking that he's going to be kinder than the bishop. There were actual tears in Sir Richard's eyes as he tried to thank the foresters. God save you, comrades, that means friends, and keep you all, said he with deep feeling, and give me a grateful heart. We shall wait for you 12 months from today here in this place, said Robin, shaking him by the hand, and then you will repay us the loan if you have prospered. So if he has more money, if he got his money back, he would be able to pay them back. Ooh, this reminds me of Sir Gawain repaying the debt to the Green Knight. I shall return it to you within the year, upon my honor as Sir Richard of the Lee, and for all time count on me as a steadfast friend, steadfast, loyal, dependable, trustworthy. So saying, the knight, led by one of Robin's men, rode down the glade till they were lost to view. And that is the end of the chapter about how Robin Hood met Sir Richard of the Lee. So again, think about what we can infer about Robin and his men by their actions, by what they do, especially at the end of the chapter. All right.